Hey everybody, hello. We are live. We are live on YouTube. We are here. I'm going live on TikTok as well. Want to go ahead and press that and go live on TikTok. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the live. We are live on TikTok, and we're live here on YouTube, and we're talking all about how to start a podcast. As I said before, I get questions submitted to me all the time about how to start a podcast. How can I start a podcast? How can I start a podcast? So I decided to go ahead and do lives around answering questions for people who want to start a podcast, who just have questions that on how to get started, what equipment to use, should I not do audio versus video, just really simple questions around podcasting that I know a lot of people have. And so I'm going to run through questions that were submitted to me already. Just saying questions from yesterday, just in case people who missed the live can really kind of get those questions answered again today. Okay. So first off, let me just tell you guys, I'm Shaunie Sanders. I'm host of the Girl Take No podcast. I've been doing the Girl Take No podcast for about almost 2 years. I've grown my podcast to 30,000 downloads within the past 2 years. And it's been really good. It's been really successful and it's continually growing. And I'm super excited about that. But also I did a lot of different strategies to get to the 30,000 downloads. So it takes a little time, but you can definitely make it happen. But this is all about starting a podcast. I have so many people out there that want to start a podcast, but just don't know where to start, don't know where to get the information from. And I'm here to give you guys as much information as I can. So if you want to submit questions in the chat, you can drop your questions in the comment sections and I can answer questions for you there. But I will go ahead and get things kind of started off with questions. But also before I do, make sure you guys follow us on all social channels at Girl Take No Pod. Also right here, it's the Girl Take No podcast for those who are watching on TikTok. So we release episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. So make sure you guys download the podcast episode. Make sure you listen to the episodes. We're all about entrepreneurship and giving that behind the scenes stories of how we push through those hard times when it comes to entrepreneurship. And so, like I said, I'm doing this live stream for just to answer questions around podcasting, to answer some questions around how to get started for people that submitted me questions. And one of the top questions that most people submit is, should I do a video or should I do an audio podcast, or do I need to do both? And I tell people all the time, it's really up to you. It's your own discretion. We do have to remember that podcast platforms are audio-based platforms, right? They're not, a majority of them are not video. The only one that offers video for podcasting is Spotify. Spotify will allow you to upload video to their platform for your podcast. But when you think about if you want to do video versus audio, you really have to think about your audience and how people consume podcasts. Because honestly, a lot of people consume podcasts through audio. They're listening to it while they're in the gym, while they're driving, while they're at work. Normally they listen to a podcast when they're busy doing something because it keeps them occupied and it kind of keeps something that they can listen to. And so you think about how do people consume podcasts, but also you think about how popular video podcasting is right now. Hey, thanks everybody who's joined the chat. Thank you guys for joining the live. You think about how popular video podcasting is right now and why it's so popular, because most of these social media platforms are moving over to video for video content, short form and long form video content. We know TikTok is trying to be like YouTube and get more long form content because they want people to be on the app a lot longer, consuming more video information, video content a lot longer as well. So you think about those different things when you're thinking about launching a podcast, if you should do audio, if you should just do video, or should you do both? I do both. I do video and I do audio simply because there's some people who like to watch podcasts, right? YouTube is number one platform for a reason. So you think about how people consume information, and some people love to watch and see actually what the hosts look like, the guests, and get more of that interaction and see more of that real-time interaction. So I do suggest that you do a video podcast, but also it has to come to your own level of comfort. How comfortable are you being on camera? How comfortable are you in front of a camera? How comfortable are you letting people see you? And some people have difficulties with that, right? Not everybody wants to be on camera. Not everybody wants to be seen. People mainly want their voices to be heard, and I respect all those who feel that way. So it really is about how confident you are in front of the camera if you can actually do video podcasting. If you can't, please understand that you could still be very successful with your audio podcast. You really can. You might want to show your face on the cover of your podcast. That might be all you want to do. But understand that video podcasting is really, really big for this industry right now. And so you want to consider thinking about doing video podcasting as a part of your podcast if you're looking to launch a podcast in 2024. So that's like one of the top questions a lot of people ask when it comes to if they should start a podcast or not. And then the people ask, really, should they start or not? And a lot of people think that the market is oversaturated. Don't get me wrong. Podcasting is not like it used to be a few years ago, maybe like 5-6 years ago, actually, before COVID. It's not the same. It wasn't that many podcasters out at that time. So it was really an industry where everybody's voice could be recognized and everybody's voice could be heard. Now it's very much so saturated. There's multiple podcasts out there. And so you're very much so competing for the audiences, no matter what genre you're in. But what I like to tell people is something that's positive about that is that you still have a voice and your voice still has the right to be heard. You will find your own tribe of people who will gravitate towards your podcast, your voice, your content, what you're serving out. So you don't necessarily have to wait. And you don't have to necessarily get discouraged on not doing a podcast just because you feel like, oh, there's so many podcasters out there now. Everybody's starting a podcast. Everybody want to be a podcaster. And it does seem like that. And it seems like that because it's a popular genre right now. It's very much so popular. Just like YouTube, everybody wants to be a YouTuber, right? Everybody wants to be a content creator because all these type of genres are popular, and podcasting is really no different from that. So if you want to start a podcast, you really have to be passionate about it and you have to be dedicated to it because it comes with a very much so a high level of commitment. You have to be committed to what you're doing. And if you're not committed to it, then I would tell you don't start. Because the worst thing you can do is start a podcast, do a few episodes, and then stop, right? Stop, and all of a sudden people are wondering, you gain yourself a few listeners, and all of a sudden you stop, and people are wondering, well, what happened to you? And then you try to come back, and you want to gain those people back, and now it's like, it's hard to get those people back now. It really is. It's hard to get those people back simply because you lost them because you took a break or you just were inconsistent with releasing episodes. So when you become a podcaster, it's so much about consistency. You want to be consistent when it comes to releasing episodes. You want to be consistent with your content. You want to be consistent with the type of content you're giving, the type of shows you're producing, the type of shows you're giving. You want to be consistent with that. Don't be all about business one day and then all of a sudden you're all about entertainment the next. You don't want to confuse your audience. You want to make sure your audience know who you are, what your podcast is about, and what you're offering them. And so you want to make sure that you're clear on your message. You're clear on your message. You're clear on who you're serving to, the audience that you're serving. And that's one of the first things I tell people. You got to get clear on who is it that you want your podcast to be for. It is so important. And I think when I first started my podcast, I didn't really think about that. I thought I could be a podcast for women, for all women, right? I'm a woman. I love women rights issues, the way we talk. I love us as women. And I want to talk about women, entrepreneurship. I want to talk about women in business. And so I felt like I could just talk to everybody until I realized after watching Grow With The Show, his name is Kevin, he does Grow With The Show podcast, Grow the Show podcast, and it's all about podcasting. And he broke it down for me and said that you cannot talk to everybody with your podcast. If you talk to everybody, that means you're talking to nobody. So you really have to be very clear and you have to define who your podcast is for. Who is it that you want this podcast to be for? It's really something you have to define. Thanks, guys, for joining it live. Thank you, guys, for joining it live. But you have to really decide, who do you want your podcast to be for? Who is that person you're talking to? A lot of times we think that the person is just like us, when honestly, the person can be somewhat similar to us, but different from us. And so you want to make sure you define who that person is. And for me, I realized I couldn't talk to every woman. Every woman that I was talking to, that I was trying to talk to, didn't really relate to the messages that I was given. So you want to make sure you define who is it that I'm really talking to. And you want to take your time with this. You don't have to rush through this part when you're trying to start a podcast. Take your time with it, because once you start pumping out content, it becomes easy because you know exactly who you're talking to. So when people tell you like, know who you're talking to, it's real. That shit is real. You really need to know who it is that you're talking to because it's going to matter 100% when it comes to being able to keep up with episodes, being able to produce episodes, being able to give content. Because a lot of podcasters start and then they get so stuck when it comes to, oh God, what am I going to talk about this week? What am I going to have? Who am I going to have on the show? What kind of content am I going to give? When you're very defined and clear on who your audience is, who that person is you're talking to, the content ideas are endless. They are endless. Trust me, I know because I had to get clear on it. And once I got clear, I understood 100% who I'm talking to and what they're looking for. And so you really have to define that. So before you even start anything, before you even decide if you're going to do a video podcast or an audio podcast, right? You want to make sure that you know who it is that you are talking to first. That's the main thing that matters. Who am I talking to? Who is this podcast for? What do I want them to learn from this podcast? You know, and then you think about, well, how often do I want to give them this podcast? What I want them to take away from this podcast. Because once you realize what you want them to learn and what you want them to walk away with, then that's what keep people coming back every week. That's how you get people to come back every week, is because you're giving them exactly what they're looking for. You're not just out there throwing something out there and hoping it stick. You've actually planned out this episode. You know this topic. You either booked a guest to help you talk about this topic, or you're going to talk about this topic. Because that's another main thing about podcasting. You have to decide, do I want to be a solo podcaster or do I want to be a podcast that actually have guests on that interview people, an interview style? Or do I want to be more of a mystery crime type of podcast, right? So that's very important that you understand what type of podcaster you want to be. When I first started out, I did a lot of solo episodes. And I got to tell you that for a lot of podcasters, if you're brand new to the game, you never been on air before. I used to do radio for Sirius Satellite Radio before they did the merger with XM. So I've been in radio for a long time. I've been on the radio. I've done interviews. I've done voiceovers. I've done a lot of stuff in radio. So if you're not comfortable speaking on the microphone, then I would tell you to start off as a solo podcaster and begin to gain that level of confidence in yourself. Because the more you talk and the more you hear yourself, you then begin to say, okay, you know what? I'm beginning to be more comfortable with talking just in front of a camera, right? Because right now it might not be too many people listening and watching. So take advantage of those few episodes, those first episodes that you're going to come out with, because honestly, nobody might not watch you or listen to you maybe for a month. I mean, that's how this thing goes, you know, it really is. It's a slow burn when it comes to podcasting and podcast growth. And I could talk more about the growth of your podcast in a different type of live, because once you got the foundation down, the marketing piece is a whole different type of beast. It's a whole level. It's a whole different level. And it's going to be to the point where I will offer a course on how to market your podcast for success, because I'm going to tell you right now, people don't tell you how to truly market your podcast. It's not about the social media clicks and likes and followers. It's not about that. The podcast listener and the actual social media person who follow you are two different types of audiences. You got to remember that. A lot of people think because you see podcasters who have large social followings that, oh, they must be doing so great with their downloads. That's not the way it is. A lot of times people that follow you on social media might not necessarily listen to your episodes. They might only look at you on social media. They might only see you through those clips on social media. So you want to be very careful when you're looking at podcasters who are successful. And then those who are truly successful have been around for a very long time. They've been around for a very long time. So that's why they've gained that level of success. That's why they have such great social following and downloads when it comes to their podcast. But when it comes to podcasting, it's not about social following. It's about the downloads. It's about your downloads. And that's where it comes down to, because you can have a lot of people watch your clips. You can have a lot of people watch you here on YouTube. But if they're not downloading that episode, like listening, that's what really matters. That's what really counts. It's the listenership. And so I want to make sure you guys keep that in mind when you're thinking about starting a podcast, is that it's not about having such this large social following, because I thought that too. Oh, I got to build my social presence. I build my social presence. I'm going to have a lot of people download my podcast. That didn't happen. It doesn't happen that way. I had to do different types of marketing strategies to actually get people to download my podcast. Oh, thank you for the gifts. To download my podcast, I have to do different types of strategies to actually get people to download. So I don't want people to think that because you see somebody who don't have a large social following who's a podcaster, please don't mistake it for them not having major downloads when it comes to their podcast, because it's so different. The audiences are so different, and we have to remember that. Okay. So listen, guys, thank you for joining live, guys. Thank you guys for watching. We're talking about how to start a podcast in 2024. I'm here to answer whatever questions you have, give you some tips, tricks, and hacks on how to successfully launch your podcast. And I have a list of questions that people have already submitted to me that I'm kind of talking through, because I know this is some of the things that most people want to know about. And I want to make sure I answer those questions and get those out, because I know a lot of people have questions. I know a lot of people have dreams of being a podcaster, of starting a podcast. Either people think that it's too hard to do, they think you need a lot of money to do it with equipment, or they just think it's so much into it, right? And it's not. The honest truth is, it is so easy to start a podcast. If you don't have no equipment, as long as you have a computer, that's all you need. Your computer has a microphone and it has a camera on it. And you can use that up until you're able to afford equipment. That's all you really have to do. That's all you need to start, honestly. Something to record your voice and your video. That's really what you need. And also you need like a recording software, like an actual studio to record yourself in. Some people use Zoom, but I personally use Riverside Studio. Riverside FM is one of my personal favorite platforms that I use for all my podcasts. It is such an amazing platform, because what it does, not only do you record your podcast in this platform, you can edit your video and audio separately. It gives you 2 separate files for video and audio. It creates show notes for you. It generates titles for your podcast for you now. It also gives you short clips to use on social media, right? It gives you snapshot images if you want to use some of those as your thumbnails for YouTube, if you create it. But I just love it with the fact that how easy it is. If you want to have guests come in, you send them out a link and they come in the studio so easily. And the best thing about Riverside FM is that if the internet goes out in your home, Riverside is still recording. That's one of the best things about Riverside. Thank you guys so much for the gift. That's one of the best things about Riverside, is that it continuously record. It's not going to drop like Zoom does. Zoom will drop your session quickly if the internet goes out. Riverside doesn't do that. So I'm a huge fan for Riverside. So if you guys want to check it out, you can actually click the link in my bio. Click the link in my bio, and also you can download it for free and play with it for free to see if you like it. But you're really going to need to invest in it. It's not super expensive. It's something that is definitely worth it if you want to start podcasting. But those are only 3 things you need: your computer, because it has an audio and it has a microphone and a camera attached to it, and a recording software. That's it. The only 2 things you need to start your podcast. And to market your podcast, you want to create your social pages. And when it comes to creating social pages, and this is one of the things I stress to people to know, you want to create separate social media pages for your podcast, for your business. You do not want to use your personal social pages. You can use your personal pages to talk about your podcast, right? To tell people you have a podcast coming, but you want to make sure it have its own social media, because you want to grow that brand as a separate brand from you. You really want to make sure you do that. So make sure you guys remember that. But listen, if you have any other questions, make sure you drop them in the chat here. I'm here to answer any questions. Another question that I get when it comes to podcasting is, how do I book guests? If I want to be a podcast that bring guests on, how do I book guests? And I would tell people, one of the things when you're starting out as a podcaster, right? You're a small podcaster, you're just starting out, you don't know nobody, right? You don't know nobody. Nobody knows you. So a lot of people tell you, oh, get on other shows, get on other podcaster shows. You can do that. You can try to do that. But if you're small and just starting out, they're not going to let you come on. So if you want to get guests on your show, the first thing I tell you to do, because this is what I did, is to use your immediate network. Use your immediate network. Who are the people that you have in your circle that you can use that will come on your show that might have some expertise and some things that you might want, or either somebody that's a really good conversationalist that you want to come on with you just to talk about, I don't know, current events, entertainment. It could be one of your best girlfriends. It could be one of your best buds, like whatever it is, whoever that person is, you want to make sure that you're able to utilize your circle that you have. Begin to utilize your circle of friends. See what they're doing, see if they're interested in coming on the show and just having a conversation with you, right? just having a conversation with you. That's all podcasting is. It's just having conversations. And that's what I would tell you to do. The next step I would tell you to do once you're ready is to do outreach. You know, you want to send emails to people that you want to be on the show. For me, a lot of that is done on LinkedIn. A lot of outreach is done on LinkedIn, but the only people I'll outreach to now that I do outreach for are really big names that I want to be on the show that I know will bring a lot of visibility to my show. Right, they're bigger names. People want to hear them. People want to listen to them, and so that's kind of the outreach that I would do. Right now, I'm in a position where I don't have to do much outreach. I get an influx. I mean, an influx of emails for people requesting to be on my show. And once you begin to do your podcast, you begin to market your podcast in the right way, people will begin to recognize your show. People begin to see that, hey, this is like a really great podcast. I want to be on it. And then they will start sending you requests to be in your podcast. I get so many on a daily basis that I have to filter through just to see who really fits my brand before I allow people to come on. And that's a major thing that you want to remember when you're starting your podcast. Bring on people that actually fit your brand, that actually fit what your show is about. Because if not, then it's kind of like, what's the purpose of them being on there? Right? Unless you give this show, this particular episode, a name of some sort. But make sure you book people who are related to what you're doing, related to what you're trying to do. Make sure you do that. Don't book people that have nothing to do with your brand. Right? I'm entrepreneurship, right? So I book people who are entrepreneurs. I book women who have took the leap from their 9 to 5 into entrepreneurship because that's who my audience is. My audience are women who are looking to take that leap, who are looking to ditch their 9 to 5 and leap into entrepreneurship. Right? So they're looking for side hustles. They're looking for strategies, hacks, tips, tricks on how to make that happen. They're looking to connect with other women's stories on how they got through the hard times, right? Because it's hard times. Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. So those are the kind of people that I make sure that I bring on my show. They're going to give my audience what they're looking for. I bring on experts who are experts in digital marketing, who are expert in email marketing, Shopify, Etsy, right? Amazon, who are expert with finance to help you get money for your business. So I bring on different women or different people who are experts in certain areas because they're in entrepreneurship. I just had a guy on who talked all about dating over the age of 40, right? He's an entrepreneur. He's been doing this for so long. He's been a coach. Absolutely amazing business. So you got to make sure that whoever you're going to bring on your show relates to your brand. Don't just bring people on if they have nothing to do with what you're doing. So make sure you're mindful of that. And listen, guys, if you want to know more about the platforms that I use, I will be happy. I offer a consultation where I let people book me for like 30 minutes and kind of help them go through a podcast strategy. And if you want to get on the phone with me, all you have to do is click the link in my bio, schedule yourself a call for 30 minutes. And if it's something that you want to do and you're serious about, I tell people, don't book me if you're not serious. Make sure that this is really something you want to do. Because when you get into podcasting, you need to ask yourself, is this going to be a hobby or is this going to be a viable business for me? Because there's money to be made here. There is money to be made with podcasting. Don't ever get it twisted. Don't ever think it's not. There's money to be made. Multiple ways that you can bring in money with your podcast. So you have to make sure that it's something you're serious about. Don't book me if you're not serious about it. If you just want to do it as a hobby, I would tell you to go ahead, start and do your thing. You know what I mean? And make sure you're passionate about it. But if you're looking to build a viable business from this and actually have multiple streams of income coming in from your podcast, then please make sure you book that call with me. I can help set you up with a podcast strategy, just really to help you get started. And then I'm going to be offering a course on how to start a podcast and also a course on how to market your podcast because I know what it takes. I've been there. I'm still considering myself a small podcaster. So I know what it takes to get to that next level. I know what it takes to get those 30,000 downloads. I know what it takes to get people to actually download your podcast and say, you know what? I'm going to come back and listen to this next week. I know what it takes. I've listened to all the gurus tell you, oh, get booked on other people's shows. Make sure you do collaborations and market your show on social media. I did all that stuff. And I'm going to tell you, it brought very little traction to my podcast. Very little. There are some very clear, defined things that you have to do as a new podcaster to get your podcast seen in this sea of podcasts, right? There are things that you need to do in order to get the visibility that you need on your podcast. And it's completely outside of all the stuff that the gurus talk about. Marketing is such a key aspect, but there's certain things in marketing that you can do to get that visibility on your podcast. And there's things that you need to do when it comes to your content. And so, as I said, if you're looking for some in-depth type of strategy call, type of consultation, make sure you guys go ahead and book me. The link is in my bio. You can always book me at any time and we can get on the line. We can talk about your dream of becoming a podcast and really try to give you a plan and a strategy to move forward with, because this is what it's about. It's about having a plan. You're going to have a plan. You can fly by the seat of your pants. Now you can't, because I did it that first season. I got to admit. But if you want to get serious about it, then it takes a plan. It takes strategy. It takes consistency. It really does. You're going to have to be dedicated to it. You're going to have to release episodes even when you don't feel like it. I know right now I didn't release an episode for a month simply because I had some family emergencies that happened. And stuff like that happened, but I tried to stay a little bit on social media, but now I'm back at it. And the reason why, I was able to do that because I've already had episodes ready to go. I'm the kind of podcasters where I'm not recording episodes the week of. I have like 10 or 15 episodes already recorded. I'm just releasing episodes. That's the type of schedule I'm on. And that's the type of schedule. If you want to be serious about your podcast, you're going to have to get on that type of schedule. You don't want to be that person that's like, oh, I got to figure out who I'm going to have on my show this week. You don't want to be that person, because then what if you don't get nobody? You still have to come out with an episode. So for me, I'm a planner. I plan ahead. That's why I always have 10 to 15 episodes already done and ready to go. So there's really I don't really have to have breaks. It's just my family emergency happened and everything just had to halt because of that. And you all can understand when something happened with your family, things have to halt, right? So just make sure that if this is what you really want to do and you want to be consistent, then you can book a call with me. If not, I would tell you to go ahead and get started and enjoy it, but there is money to be made from here. This is something you're passionate about. If it's something you're really passionate about, you're going to do it. It's going to be easy to do. It's not going to be hard at all. You just have to be passionate about it. And I'm just someone who's completely passionate about what I'm doing. And I love it. And I love doing podcasts. I love it. Like I said, it's always been my thing. And now that I know all the stuff that I do know, I want to help other people be successful at it too. I want to help you not have to go through all the hoops and the hurdles that I had to go through, or look for the information that I had to look for when I could just go ahead and offer it to you, where you could kind of skip the line. And I can really help you get to that next level. I can really help you have a successful podcast. But don't look for no quick trick, no overnight success, because that's not how it works. Unless you're already a big celebrity and you're coming out with a podcast, and yeah, you're going to get those numbers like that, right? When it comes to building and seeing real growth, steady growth, that does take time. So nothing is a quick fix. I'm not going to get on here and tell you, oh yeah, you get on that call with me. After that call with me, you want to get 100,000 downloads. I'm not going to tell you that, because that's a lie. Nobody can tell you that. I'm not one of the people that are going to make some false ass promises to you. That's not who I am. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to tell you right now that to get to where I am now within a year, it's going to take some work. It's going to take some work. Sometimes it takes people 5 years to get to 30,000 downloads, but it's going to take some work. Like it really is. And don't gauge social media based off how successful someone podcast is, because some podcasters don't have social media and they're like hundreds of thousands of downloads, right? Some of them do, and I go to their pages, and their pages are not like popping like others, but they have hundreds of thousands of downloads monthly. And so the audiences are different. Just remember that audiences are different. But if you want to start a podcast right now in 2024, I would tell you to do it. But make sure you launch with a strategy in mind and an end goal for yourself. Like, what do you want this to happen with this podcast? Make sure you have an end goal. And as I said, I get questions submitted to me all the time, and I always want to come on and answer as many questions as I can for people, because I know there are a lot of people out there who are still on the fence on whether or not they should start a podcast. And if you're still on the fence, let this be a message to you that tells you, do it. Right now is a time for you to do it. Don't wait. Just do it. You have something you want to say. You have something you want to talk about. You have a voice that needs to be heard. I would tell you to do it. Don't wait. It's never going to be the right time. We should know that by now, that it's never going to be the right time to do anything. If you want to launch something, you need to do it right now. That's just what it is. You need to do it right now. But I'm going to go through a couple more questions that I normally get I had to write them down, y'all, because I can't remember everything. And then also, okay, yeah, this is one of the questions that a lot of people ask too. How do you come up with ideas for your episodes? And I kind of touched on this too. Before, when I first launched my podcast, I was creating episodes around my guests. Right? Like I book somebody, come on. I'm like, okay, she's talking about, she's an entrepreneur. She talk about this and that. And so I have set questions that I would ask to make sure that I get what my audience need. But now going forward, I feel like now is a place, and I'm gonna tell y'all this too, that I think the main thing you need to do is to book guests around your episodes. You need to plan out your episodes and you book guests that you think will be good for your episodes. That's how you get the best out of your episodes. That's how you get the best out of your audience to make sure they're getting what they need if you book guests around them. That's the best way to do it. That's how I'm doing it going forward. I know what my audience want. I've been doing it for a little bit now, so I know what my audience is looking for. So now I'm able to actually say, okay, you know what? I'm going to do an episode about Shopify stores, because a lot of my audience want to know how to launch a Shopify store, how to be successful at Shopify. And so I'm bringing on guests who are experts in Shopify. I might even do a series on Shopify just to give people what they need so they can have a successful launch when it comes to launching a Shopify store. So make sure you think about your episodes first. Plan your episodes, plan what you want to talk about, and then bring people on for that. If you're solo podcasting, then it's like plan your episodes still. Plan what you're going to talk about. Don't just get on the mic and just talk about whatever. What you can. I'm not saying you can't. You can, but the key is, can you keep that consistent? Can you stay consistent with that? And so being able to plan your episodes is something you can stay consistent with. So make sure you plan out your episodes and book guests around your topics versus putting topics around your guests. Unless you have a big name guest come on your show, then that's different. You're like, I don't care if this person's big. They're going to bring a lot of visibility to the podcast. I'm going to create a show around them. That's mainly how you do that. Right? But for your other shows, book guests around your topic. So that way you make sure your audience get the best information that they need. And I think that's the best way to do it. All right, guys. So what's the next? Oh, the next question that a lot of people ask is about equipment. And I tell people, listen, I've used different type of equipment for my podcast. When I first started, I had a microphone that was under $50. All my equipment I got off Amazon. All my equipment now I got off Amazon. So I would tell you, like I said, the easiest way to start is with your computer, your laptop, and a recording software, right? A podcast studio software. That's the easiest way to start. If you want more in your studio, if you want a microphone, if you want a soundboard where you can have multiple microphones connected to that microphone, if you're doing in-house people, if you have people coming in-house, like you said, hey, I got my studio. My podcast studio is downstairs in my basement. And so I can invite people in my studio. And so I have 3 microphones. I have a soundboard, but I've upgraded my podcast studio with all the top equipment. But I would tell you if you want to start out, just use your computer. You can put on a ring light to give you a little bit more lighting. And you can have a microphone that plugs into your computer as well. Or you can just use the audio from your computer. That's how simple this can be. So the equipment, you can start off with good equipment. You can start off with low-end equipment and then build your way up as I did. But don't let equipment stop you from starting. All you have to do is just start. And if you want to know the equipment that I have in my studio, you can always click the link in my bio also and shop my studio. It's on Amazon. Everything I got in my studio is from Amazon. Absolutely everything comes from Amazon. So you can also shop my studio. And I have products in there that I started with, which are very low end, and the high end products that I have now in my studio. So make sure you guys go check that out. And then another big question that people ask is about, how do we keep listeners coming back? How do you get listeners to come back to your episodes? And I tell people with this, it's all about strategy. It's all about strategy. It's a strategy to get it done. There's so many podcasters out there. And like I said, we're all competing for these audiences, but it's about strategy. So if you want to get people to come back to your podcast, it's all about your episodes. It's all about what's interesting to them and giving people content that you think they really want to hear. Right. And I know that sounds generic, but that's truly what it comes down to. It's about giving people a reason to come back. One example I can give you is that one of the top genres for podcasting is crime podcasts, right? Crime, mystery, murder mystery. People love those type of podcasts because they get so invested in the story. And so I'm going to tell you that if you want people to come back, you need to give people a story that they can get invested in. Give them a story they can get invested in. That's why I tell people you need to create series. I would do series versus seasons. When you do series, that means people are coming back to get that next piece of information. When you think about a murder mystery podcast or a crime podcast, we're coming back every week or every day because I want that next bit of information. I want to know what happened next. I want to know what happened next. I gotta listen to this podcast to the end because I gotta know how it ends. And that's what I mean by you need to learn how to create series. You need to be able to create some type of series that'll get people coming back more and more for your podcast, more and more for that episode. If you're able to hook people on a story, and just give them bite-sized pieces of it. Don't give them the whole thing. Give them bite-sized pieces. Then that's how you get people to come back to your podcast. And there's other ways you can get people to come back to, which is why my podcast or marketing course will be out soon. So you'll have other ways on how to get people to come back. So many different ways to get people to come back, to get people to download your podcast, get people to listen to your podcast as well. So just want to make sure that I answer that question. All right, guys, listen. I only want to do these lives for 30 minutes because I have so much more I have to do when it comes to making sure the editing and everything is done with episodes. But I'll be back on daily to give you guys more information when it comes to podcasting. As usual, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments. You can DM me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about podcasting that you may have. So just make sure you hit me up, and I'll give you any questions. I'll answer as many questions as I can. But also, if you need more consultation, if you need more of a guidance, then you can always book me for a one-on-one consultation. And also, I will be coming out with a How to Start Podcast course very soon. It's going to be very inexpensive. You guys don't have to worry. I'm not trying to break the bank on that. But it's just a simple course just to help you get started. And if you have not yet, please go ahead, click the link in my bio. Go and download our free guide on how to start a podcast. I give you some really good information on getting started with equipment, ideas, all types of stuff. So make sure you guys go download that, get that free podcast link on how to download a podcast, on how to start a podcast. It is a free guide that I created for you because I get so many questions around it. I decided to do a guide too. So make sure you guys go get that. And I am Shaunie Sanders, guys. I will be back on tomorrow to answer any questions on how to start a podcast in 2024. I'll see you guys later. Listen, guys, make sure that you follow me here on YouTube. Follow Girl Take No Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. We're going to be coming back more with different lives on podcasting. So make sure you guys follow us. Make sure you guys continue to follow us. Make sure you guys watch the live streams and download. Everything will be down in the comment section below, down in the description below, on a free guide on how to start, and also the consultation on one-on-one booking. So if you need more help, but I will see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.